It's time for the news.
In today's top stories, the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, has announced a series of measures in favor of the media on the occasion of the National Press Day. New air strikes were today carried out by the Israeli army against the Gaza Strip, causing more victims since the expiry of the truce. The European Conference of Coordination of Solidarity with the Western Sahara, held in Toledo, Spain, has reiterated its support to the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination and independence. Hello and welcome to Radio Algeria International. I'm Jamal Samani. The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has presided over the awarding ceremony of the President of the Republic's Prize for the Professional Journalist. The themes chosen for this year's award are the New Algeria and the issue of food and water security, the New Algeria strengthening the capacity and creativity of young people, and energy security and its geopolitical dimensions. The prize awarding ceremony was attended by senior government officials as well as heads of the national media and guests from the Arab media world. President Tebboune has announced a series of measures in favor of the media coinciding with the National Press Day. In a statement read on his behalf during the awarding ceremony of the President of the Republic's Prize for Professional Journalists, the Communication Minister Mohamed Lagab said the measures were tantamount to an indirect support brought of the media. Among these, a reduction of the national media's subscription to the Algerian Press Service, as well as a decrease of plane tickets for sport journalists. Mr. Lagab has announced the creation of 2 certificates of recognition for media outlets and journalists on the occasion of the celebration of National Press Day. On the occasion, the Algerian minister deplored the unprofessional and unethical treatment by the Western media of the ongoing massacres by the Israeli occupation in the Gaza Strip.
This conference takes place in the midst of several geopolitical changes in the world, foremost of which is the major turn in the Palestinian cause and the brutal aggression by Zionist forces against the Gaza Strip, which revealed unprofessional and unethical treatment by the Western media in general. It is the same case about the war between Russia and Ukraine that generated a radical change in the world's media practice, as well as the very tense conflicts on the Asian continent. All these challenges and transformations raise a number of questions at the national, regional and global levels.
The recent working visit of inspection paid by the President of the Republic to the western province of Tindouf has highlighted the importance of promoting the mining activities. In this respect, President Tebboune announced the launching during next year's first semester of a free trade zone between Tindouf and Mauritania. On the occasion, he stressed the necessity to definitely get rid of the imports of raw materials and advocating transformation in a bid to create an additional value. The inauguration of the Béchar-Tindouf-Garage-Billet railway translates the authorities' will to boost the mining sector. Our colleague Mariam Barshi has more details on the subject.
The Béchar-Tindouf-Garage-Billet railway, which is of vital importance, opens up vast prospects for the development and exploitation of the region's mining potential through the development of one of the world's great iron mines. The 90-50-kilometer rail project is the backbone for transporting goods and ore to the industrial facilities and ports covered by the National Rail Network. The Western Mining Rail Line, which will enable more than 140 tons of iron ore to be transported daily from the Garage-Billet deposit, forms the main mining transport loop linking the Garage-Billet deposit to the Bashar Oran rail line, passing through a number of regions. The railway project, which is part of the government's plans to develop the mineral resources of the province of Tindouf, Algeria's gateway to West Africa, is intended to boost development in the region of exploiting and transporting iron ore from Garage-Billet, 140 kilometers south of Tindouf to industrial plants. According to the public works sector, this railway, which will link the province of Peshawar to Gara Jabalat region over a distance of around 1,000 kilometers, will make a major contribution both to reducing the cost of transporting iron from the Gara Jabalat deposit to the various industrial regions and to boosting local development and national economy in general.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, 14 hours 37 minutes Algeria's time. More with our national news with Mariam Barshi.
The President of the Council of the Nation, Salah Goudil, has received here in Algiers the Secretary General of the African National Congress of the Republic of South Africa, ANC, Fikile Mambula. During the meeting, the two men examined the historic relations existing between the countries, marked by their action against occupation and apartheid, and their converging views on several topical issues, notably on the African and international scene. The ANC Secretary General expressed satisfaction at his visit to Algeria, which he says has backed his country's fight against apartheid and which welcomed Nelson Mandela. He held the close relations linking South Africa to Algeria, which he described as a key partner in all fields and as a historic support within the African space. Back to you, Jamal.
Fresh air strikes were today carried out by the Israeli occupation army against the Gaza Strip, causing more victims since the expiry of the truce. The details in this report.
The Israeli raids particularly targeted the region of Khan Yunis in the southern part of the Palestinian enclave and killed at least 7 people in the sector of Rafah on the border with Egypt. According to the Palestinian sources, the continued bombardments of Gaza have claimed more than 15,000 lives, half of them women and children, since the Israeli army launched its operation nearly 2 months ago. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for a sustainable truce and warned against a huge humanitarian disaster in Gaza, as half of the Palestinian territory has been destroyed or damaged by the Israeli bombardments. The UN has put at 1.8 the number of Palestinians displaced by the conflict and who are deprived of basic needs. This came as the US Vice President Kamala Harris urged Israel to do more to protect the innocent civilians and described the extent of the suffering of images and videos coming from Gaza as devastating.
Now, thousands of people have taken to the streets of Paris, Washington and New York to press for the enforcement of a permanent ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. They denounced the continued bombardments carried out by the Israeli army, which killed thousands of lives and caused the destruction of almost all the basic services. Now, the UKK was marked by a total support with Western Saharan file or people to self-determination. Mariam.
The European Conference of Coordination of Solidarity with Western Sahara, held in Toledo, Spain, has reiterated its support to Sahrawi people's fight for self-determination and independence. In a declaration issued at the end of the meeting, the participants called on the international community to stop hindering the fight of the Sahrawi people to gain their freedom and independence in accordance with international law. It called on the UN and the Security Council to meet their commitments for the organization of the self-determination referendum in Western Sahara and to end Morocco's occupation of the territory. 300 delegates attended the conference, including representatives of governments, parliamentarians, associations and committees of support to the Sahrawi people. The meeting was attended by an important Sahrawi delegation led by the Sahrawi Prime Minister Bushraya Hammoudi Bayoun. Former Peruvian Foreign Affairs Minister Cesar Landa was this year's edition's guest of honor. Our colleague from the Spanish service at Radio Algeria International, Wahib Amiri, interviewed the representative of the Polisario Front in the UK and Northern Ireland, Sidi Breaker, outside the conference.
And once more, we have seen the authorities and an official delegation from the brother Algerian Republic. As usual, This is a full, authentic expression of solidarity, for full support of not only the just cause of the Sahrawi people, but also all the just causes all over the world. This is Algeria. We are used to this steadfasting position, this unbreakable principle of solidarity with just causes, and especially with the Sahrawi cause. So I think the COCO was successful. All the participants had the same impression. The gathering was really important, and especially in these moments in which we are living a second war in Western Sahara since last 20 November the 13th. So we are very grateful to all these expressions of solidarity, of the Algerian expression of solidarity and all the European movement of solidarity.
That was the representative of the Polisario Front in the UK and Northern Ireland, Sidi Breaker for Radio Algeria International. Back to you, Jamal.
Kenyan President William Ruto brought together African leaders in Dubai during the ongoing discussions of COP28 to accelerate the green industrialization of Africa. The African Green Initiative was launched at an event attended by the African leaders. This initiative aims to accelerate and develop green industries and businesses in Africa, promote climate change mitigation, and stimulate green economic growth on the continent. In his remarks, Mr. Ruto said that the initiative marks a concrete step towards the realization of the Nairobi Declaration by activating the multiplication of green industry clusters under the aegis of the private sector, he says.
We have come here to profile our assets, whether it is in the Sahel region, where my brother, the president of Mauritania, comes from. The renewable assets of solar in that part of the world are immense, and we want to use those resources for the growth of our continent. Whether it is renewable assets in other parts of our country, whether it is renewable hydro energy in Zambia, in Zimbabwe, these are assets that are available to us. Or the geothermal resources, wind, solar in East Africa, in Kenya, in Burundi, in Rwanda, in Tanzania. These are assets that are available to us as a continent, and we want to bring these assets onto the table so that we can leverage on these assets for industrialization of our continent, to create jobs, to create opportunity, and to make sure that we even the scales on the development of our globe.
Participants at the event also stressed that the green industrialization of Africa was essential to achieving the world's collective climate ambitions. You're listening to Radio Algeria International, and here's a reminder of our top stories. The President of the Republic, Abdelmadjid Tebboune, has announced a series of measures in favor of the media on the occasion of the National Press Day. New airstrikes were today carried out by the Israeli army against the Gaza Strip, causing more victims since the expiry of the truce. And the European Conference of Coordination of Solidarity with the Western Sahara, held in Toledo, Spain, has reiterated its support to the Sahrawi people's fight for self-determination and independence. This is Radio Algeria International, the English service.
The international event of the week.
More Palestinians, including women and children detained in Israeli jails, were released this week as part of the truce deal agreed on by the Israeli occupying authorities and the Palestinian Hamas movement. The 4-day pause in fighting was extended by 2 days to allow for the release of more Palestinians and for the delivery of a much-needed aid to the population in Gaza. Meanwhile, talks held in Doha under Qatar's mediation continue to try and reach a possible extension of the temporary ceasefire. In this respect, Qatar's foreign ministry said the mediators hoped they could build on the extension to secure the release of more detainees and prepare the ground for a more sustainable truce. Asked if the Israeli government would agree to and abide by a more sustainable truce as it vowed to carry on its military operations in Gaza, our political analyst Hamoud Salhi had this to say.
All indications show otherwise. The Israeli resumption of aggression on the Palestinians in Gaza and West Bank is a clear indication that the Zionist state has no intention of giving peace a chance. The leadership declaration to resume the war after the temporary ceasefire are a strong evidence of how they approached the truce period. The Israeli leaders did not leave doubt that they would resume their inhuman bombardment on Gaza the moment the truce was over. True to their words, the Zionist army embarked on another genocide, killing and injuring hundreds of civilians in the last 3 days. Sources report that the Israeli presence in Gaza is an open-ended question, with some speculation that the defense forces would continue their atrocities for at least 3 months. Others predict that it will be until January, based on report that the United States gave them until that time, in an anticipation of increased international pressure or for fear the war would drag into the election campaign period in the United States. What is clear is that there is a consensus that the Prime Minister Netanyahu and his war cabinet have personal interest in prolonging this war, hoping for a win at all costs. This is for fear that maybe there might be brought to justice once this is over. What's clear also is the fact that world opinion has shifted in favor of the Palestinians, as seen by what's widespread demonstration in the United States, Europe, and throughout the world. In addition, the Palestinian resistance has proven its resolve to defeat Israel. It has won the battlefield and the mind of the world opinion. Continuing the war will not stop this resolve or the resistance. It is this fact that will drive the Israelis to rethink their approach to Gaza and ultimately come to terms with peace with the Palestinians.
The truce extension was hailed by the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres as a major step, saying he hopes more humanitarian aid could enter the Gaza Strip. He described it as a glimpse of hope amid the darkness of war, at a time when UN agencies express concern at a deeper humanitarian crisis that may follow if Israel resumes its attacks on Gaza. The truce extension was also welcomed by US President Joe Biden, who stressed that it enabled a significant increase in the humanitarian assistance to the innocent civilians in the Gaza Strip, while reiterating that the US would continue to make efforts towards, as he put it, building a future of peace and dignity for the Palestinian people. Asked if the US president would push the Israeli government into changing its approach towards the Palestinians and agreeing to the two-state option, to which President Biden has always said he remains committed. Our political analyst commented the issue.
What is being proposed by the United States about the two-state solution at this juncture is vague at best and at worst out of touch with the reality of Gaza and West Bank. So far, the United States has presented no plans of its vision of the two-state solution. Rather, what we have seen is that the United States is looking for ways of how to establish a political order in post-occupation of Gaza. It is in this context that the visit by the Secretary of State and Vice President included visits with Arab leaders who they think they will get their support, the United States support, in its search for a solution that will include a control of the political order in Gaza in post-occupation. In retrospect, the United States and Israel might differ in the form of the two-state solution or its shape, but they agree fundamentally that they share that the shape and form of any Palestinian state is secondary to the protection of the Jewish state national security. and which is aligned with that of the United States. As the Secretary of Defense stated recently, the United States' support for Israel is outside any negotiation and will never happen, and that they would not allow Hamas to win. Such statement reflects the mind of the U.S. leadership in pushing for a two-state solution, which means the United States plan will not allow for the establishment of a viable and sovereign state, and further will reject, as they did before, any fair and inclusive Palestinian elections, or to suggest that these propositions will not be supported by any Palestinians, including resistance movement, who are calling for a viable state and allowing or letting the Palestinians decide their fate and their future.
This week, a group of lawyers representing Palestinian victims of Israel's attacks on Gaza filed a complaint to the International Criminal Court, ICC, arguing that Israel's actions amount to the crime of genocide. The complaint was submitted to the court's prosecutor by the victim's representative, who assured that although Israel was not a member of the ICC, it would not render the court ineffective. Asked if the initiative that could result in arrest warrants to be issued by the court could be carried through, our political analyst Hamoud Salhi said,
"This is correct. This court initiative could result in arrest warrant against those who are found guilty of crimes against humanity, which include collective punishment and genocide. The claims that the court will not do so are baseless, because Israeli leaders will not be prosecuted for the fact, according to them, the Jewish state is not a member, are ill-founded. And these claims are designed to derail this effort by trying to project a false image to the public at large in an effort to undermine the public support for this case. However, it is correct that the ICC has no jurisdictions over crimes committed fully in a non-member state, in this case Israel. The ICC, however, has the jurisdiction over crimes against humanity and genocide committed in any country in the world, and in this case, the state of Palestine, and regardless of who commits them. And in this respect, despite objection in a 2014 case in Gaza against Israel, the ICC ruled to investigate because the case falls under the Rome Statute, and which confers Palestine is a state and Gaza is within its boundaries. It's highly likely that this precedent will be enough for the court to accept the case and begin investigating its merits. This is to say also that the court is expected to proceed as it would do in other cases, which is to establish the merit of the case based on the evidence it is presented, which must show that the crimes presented amount to crimes that are defined by the ICC, and also defined by international norms and the Rome Statute, along with the prosecutor's office policies. Consequently, it is highly likely that the court will engage in the investigation, but because of its complexity and the pressure the court may be under, including those coming from the allied with Israel, it will be time for a final ruling, which could, if the court apply the same standards used before, the court could issue warrant against those who deemed criminal under international law, and they will be pursued. They will not be able to leave their country, to leave the Jewish state, and the moment they leave, according to the warrant, they would be arrested.
On the occasion of the celebration this week of the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas once again called for an international protection to be provided to the Palestinians. and called for an end to be put to the silent annexation, settlement and racial and discrimination measures imposed by Israel in the whole occupied Palestinian territory.
تم استهداف البيت كامل. البيت فيه فوق 40 نفر صغار وكبار وإلى آخره. فجأة راحت الحي كله 3-5 دور حوالين البيت كله راح. فوق 30 طفل، فوق 20 مرة في البيت. يا الله، مشهد بتقشعر له الأبدان.
يم الألم صار العدا فيكي، بدهم يهدوا الحرم والكل ناسيكي. يا يم الاستشهاد يا خينا أريده، يا يم بذل الروح والأقصى مد ايده. هيو رصاص العدا يقتل إخواني، والظلم والطغيان بيسعر بلادي. أقبل شهيد أمتي بالناعش محموله، ابني بطلب جنة، نفذ القدس بالروح والشهادة نتمنى. الله أكبر، الله أكبر، والنصر للمسلمين والنصر لنا إن شاء الله.
مشان الله اقفوا مع الأطفال غزة. أطفال غزة بتموت مش عشان الكبار في السن مشحوطين. إنسانية.